Once we have Hyper-V installed, now we can spin off our virtual machine. So what we'll do is we'll go down to our Start menu and we will type Hyper-V. Once you start typing the H and Y, you'll see right here that the desktop app for Hyper-V will pull up. You click it once and now we have our Hyper-V. This is the software Microsoft has allowed for virtualization. Now in this lecture you can see I've already created a Windows 10 virtual machine, but I just want to show you the process of creating a virtual machine in Microsoft Hyper-V Manager. And this is not a class on Hyper-V, but I just want to show you how you'll do this. Right here, you'll go to your machine right here, right click it, click New, click Virtual Machine. So this is a wizard to create a new virtual machine, and if you don't know what a virtual machine is, essentially it's using the computing resources of your machine to create another operating system. So the main operating system I have on this machine is Windows 10. So with the Windows 10 is my main operating system for my machine. But if I wanted to spin off, let's say Windows XP, Windows 7 or Windows 8, I can use the computing resources of my laptop to create another operating system, which is amazing with virtualization, using a lot of business contexts, but you could still do it with your own client-side laptop. So this is a wizard right here. It says before you begin. First thing we're going to do is give a virtual machine name. Now I'm not going to actually create this, but I'm just going to walk you through the wizard. So right here, let's say test VM. That's going to be the name of my virtual machine. Once I do that, I can store the virtual machine in a different place. So right here on my machine, right here, typically this is the default storage place for your virtual hard disk. So right here in Program Data, you click Browse, it will have it right there. So this is where the default will be. If you want to change it, you can click the change right here. You don't have to store it in this file path. You can put it on your desktop or your C drive, but for this case, let's leave it there. Now here's where it gets a little tricky. Right here it says, do you want a generation 1 or generation 2? Okay, generation 1 typically you're going to use for older operating systems, and it's available for backwards compatibility. It supports 32-bit and 64-bit operating systems. If you're going to create a UEFI boot, this only works with 64-bit operating systems. So if you want to spin off a 32-bit or you want anything as far as generation 2, you know, you're going more on the advanced side, Windows 8, 8.1, and Windows Server 2012 use UEFI as the boot. So we're not going to go into that as far as the firmware and association with that, but in this case we're going to pick generation 1. Now you can spin, or you can allocate as much memory you want on startup. So in this machine I have up to 16 gigabytes as far as its RAM. So you can use the RAM resources. Typically I'll start up with this much. If you have less RAM on the machine, maybe you want to start with like 500 megabytes. But in this case I'm going to put about 1 gig and use dynamic memory as far as if I want to expand that, if I'm using memory for the virtual machine. Once I have that, click Next. Then I'm going to have a virtual switch. So essentially to connect to the internet from your virtual machine, you will have to create a virtual switch. So in this case, right here it's not connected. I have created 2 switches here. I will show you how to do this next. But in this case, I want my Wi-Fi switch. So essentially it's going to use that network adapter connect to the internet from my virtual machine. So I'm sharing my network adapter. Click Next. Now right here I have my VHDX disk associated with my virtual machine. I can create a new one, or I can attach an existing one if I already have a virtual disk made. Right there I can click Next. From here, this is where it gets to installing the operating system. So we can install it later, or we can install it now and mount it. So in this case we will go to Install Operating System Image. You can use a CD or you can use an ISO. In this case I'm going to use an ISO. Go to my C drive. I have my Windows 7 ISO. Mount it there. From that will create my operating system. I'll go Next. and this will actually create my virtual machine. So this is how we run through a virtual machine. Once I click finish, I'm not going to do it in this case. I'm going to click cancel. This will pop up here and it will run through our virtual machine. So essentially I've done that. I've installed Windows 7. I'm not going to run through an installation of Windows 7, but this is essentially how to create a virtual machine. One other thing I want to show you is that you want to also go to Virtual Switch Manager, and essentially a virtual switch is sharing the resource of your network adapter. So in this case, I have a Wi-Fi switch I've created, and I'll show you how to create a new virtual switch. We're going to create external. We're going to call it test virtual. And then here I'm going to plug it in either to my Ethernet connection associated, or in this case my Wi-Fi, because I'm on the Wi-Fi. And then I'll press apply. Then I can use that virtual switch. And how will that work? I'm not going to create this one. You'll press apply, press OK, and it will show up here. Then you will go to the machine you're on. So let's say this is the Windows 10 one we're going to use. We're going to right click it, go to settings, and the network adapter is right here. So that virtual switch you create will be associated with the machine. So in this case, you want your virtual machine to be able to connect to the internet to apply the update to Windows 10. So this is essentially the basics of a virtual machine. In the next tutorial, we'll actually spin off the virtual machine, run it, and then you'll see some of the features of Hyper-V. And then from there, we will install the upgrade to Windows 10. I want to thank you for joining me in this lecture. You have a nice day.